All right, here we go. Let's get started here. All right, good morning. It's Jerrad Havins here. Wanted to check in with everybody. It's Monday morning. Super pumped to be in the office. And I wanted to do a topic today to touch on how to maximize FICO credit scores. Let me just shut this off here real quick. The YouTube messed me up. I want to talk about how to maximize FICO credit scores when it comes to debt reduction strategies and debt management, specifically with revolving accounts and credit cards. Okay. Now, what I'm about to go through will benefit anyone. It does not necessarily matter as much when it comes to your overall available credit limits themselves, like the amount. So whether you have a $300 credit limit, if you have a 500, a 1,000, a 5,000, a 10,000, a 20,000, this information here will benefit everyone equally. If you're someone who knows, hey, here in the future, let's say 3 months out, 60 days to 3 months or beyond, if you're looking to get in a position to truly maximize your FICO credit scores for lending in the future, you're going to want to take this information I'm about to teach you here today, write it down, take it in, make these adjustments right away, and you will be absolutely blown away what it does to your FICO credit scores and ultimately help you not only get approved, but qualify for the best financing terms, which in the end, dependent on what you're getting, could literally save you hundreds of dollars a month to thousands upon thousands of dollars for the life of the loan. So first thing that I want to talk about is FICO itself. So when it comes to FICO, I'm sure a lot of you are aware watching this, FICO is a credit scoring algorithm. So like if you go and apply for a mortgage, they're going to be pulling a credit report that pulls from all three major credit bureaus, Equifax, TransUnion, Experian. What they're essentially doing through a third-party service, purchasing that report, it costs money to pull this data. That's how the bureaus make their money. They sell this data for a fee. They're going to pull that data in, and then FICO is its own separate algorithm. It's its own separate entity. It's its own separate thing. And it runs a risk assessment algorithm and then spits out a score specific to the data and the historical data on that bureau itself. And so when it comes to a mortgage, let's say when you apply for a mortgage, you're going to have three separate FICO scores that are specific to mortgage. And then what the mortgage lender does is they're going to take the middle score of the three. So literally whatever the top score is, whatever the bottom score is, they're going to take the middle score, not an average, but the true middle based on the three. Okay. Whatever's in the middle, that's what they're going to base the loan off of. When it comes to credit cards, typically in most cases, when you apply for a credit card, it's going to be a single credit bureau pull. There are some that will pull from more than one, but most just pull from one bureau, which is good to know because a lot of times people might think that it impacts all three bureaus, that inquiry, which then lowers the score. So anytime that you apply for something, it's considered that's a credit seeking inquiry. You want more of something. There's going to be a slight ding to your score. And the more that you have within a certain period of time, the larger the ding of your credit score. It's created to essentially, avoid people from over applying and getting approved for too many accounts at once. Then putting you at risk, almost like you're needing something, right? There's a risk perception there. If you're applying for too much at too quick, that's risk. Hey, pump the brakes. What's going on here? Let's start denying. So that's how that works. But one thing to keep in mind that I talk to a lot of people about is FICO is different. So like if you go and apply for a mortgage, or if you apply for an auto loan, or if you apply for a credit card, all three of those FICO scores will be different. They are created specifically to evaluate risk to what you're actually applying for. So when I tell people when it comes to a mortgage, in most cases, one, they are using an older version of FICO that's used for mortgage. And a lot of times, think about it, mortgage is typically your biggest purchase you're going to make. So automatically the risk is going to just be more conservative, I would say. Typically your mortgage scores are going to be lower in most cases than, let's say, your FICO score when it comes to like your credit card, which is typically FICO 8 score specifically. It's going to typically be lower than your auto score in most cases. And so it's very important to understand that, because like if you log in, let's say Credit Karma, and you're like, oh, my scores are 730. This is great. I'm going to apply for a mortgage. And they pull it and you're at a 660. Well, that's why. That's a mortgage specific FICO score. And in this case, for Credit Karma, they're not using FICO at all. They're using a Vantage 3 scoring model, which is a completely separate algorithm and completely separate entity. So not all credit scores are created equal. And it's important to know this because it's very confusing for most people. I know like my partners in mortgage hear it all the time, like, oh, my Credit Karma is X. And they just know automatically when they pull that report, it's not going to be what Credit Karma shows. That's just how it works. So that's very important to first understand that there are different scoring models and it's specific to what you're applying for. That's number one. Okay. Now, when it comes to the debt reduction, when it comes to like how FICO weighs your credit card revolving debt management specifically is how it's termed, you have to understand that less is more. And what I mean by that is a lot of times people feel like, especially if they're kind of focused on building credit, if they don't have this information, this education, kind of common sense shows, hey, if I use this card and I pay it off on time, maybe I have a $500 limit card. I'm going to go ahead and buy some groceries on it, get some gas, and then I'm going to pay it off in full. And that shows that, hey, I'm using it and I can pay the sucker off in full and I'm doing well. I can manage my accounts. Well, here's the one thing that everyone should write down right now to understand this key point is that when you get your bill, okay, let's say you have a credit card with Discover and it's the $500 limit. You spent $400 that month. You get your bill either in email, your portal, an app, or in the mail, and you pay it off in full. Well, what you need to understand is the information on that billing statement is what was already reported to the credit bureaus. That's how it's going to show up on your credit report. It's not your payment. Your payment itself is not what ends up getting reported to the bureaus if it's an update like, hey, they paid it off in full, let's update that. That is not how it works. The information on that bill, when they generate that statement, that's the information at the same time that they're funneling that over to the bureaus. The bureaus are then taking in this information. They ultimately assign it to your profile. Now they're going to furnish that data. They're going to sell it for a fee. They're going to update your information. That's how it works. And there's a process to that. It doesn't happen automatically. It takes a little bit of time. And so understand that if you're that person right now and you're using your card throughout the month and you're paying it off in full thinking it's helping you, it's actually hurting you. You're not maximizing FICO credit scores. In fact, you may be negatively impacting your FICO credit scores. So the best thing that you can do, and I'll give you two different scenarios specific to the type of person and how you prefer to use credit cards. Now, for the first person, this is the preferred version. It's the easiest when it comes to credit card management that I'm about to explain. So first, let's just use the $500 limit card again. Well, it's going to be dependent on what you foresee that you need in the future. So if you know that you want to apply for more credit cards in the future because you're building credit and you want to get better credit cards, you want to get higher limits, well, the best ratio that you'd want to have on that statement when it comes to your balance, you'd want it to be at 9% of the limit. That would be considered right in the range of the best for credit card FICO 8 scores. Now, to keep it simple, you could just do 10%. In this case, it'd be $50 just to keep math simple for you. So basically, you'd want to use that card that month and only spend between like $45 and $50, and that's it. And then wait for it to generate its bill. You want to pay on or before the due date once it's generated, once you receive that notification. In most cases, if you go and look at your billing statement right now, in most cases, the statement is generated roughly 3 weeks before the due date. That's in most cases. So you get the billing notice, your due date's out, roughly, 3 weeks. And that is when that information is once again reported. So you want to then use it, only spend $45 to $50 in this specific situation, the $500 limit. You get the bill, you then set that up to be paid on or before the due date in full. But what you have now done is you have now controlled what's getting reported to the major credit bureaus. You've now put your credit profile in the best position to maximize FICO credit scores, to continue to start enhancing it, building up your scores. So you want activity. You don't want things to sit dormant. You want activity. but we're playing the game now. We want to show that you're managing your cards, but you don't appear to be dependent on them. So therefore, the perception's going to be that you can manage more. Because anytime you go to apply for something, you want more, right? That's what it's all about. So you need to begin to make these tweaks. Now, that's the easiest way, and it's also going to be it's going to be the simplest when it comes to overall financial wellness and your debt management in general. If you spend less on credit cards to specifically utilize them as credit building tools, you're spending less. It's not as big of a payment per month. It's going to be easier for you to manage. It's going to be easier for you to manage your budget or spending plan. And now you're kind of in congruence with what you're trying to accomplish in your financial stability and your future goals. That is going to be the simplest model that you can follow. If you can make those adjustments right now, you're going to thank me later. You're going to love me. Now, scenario number two, this is usually best for the person that's either a small business owner and they don't know about business credit yet, or they don't know how to get approved for business credit and they're using personal credit cards for business purposes. This could also be someone that's like a 1099, sales, someone in like a sales role usually, or they're in a position working for a company where they can use their personal credit card to stack up miles for business expenses that they then get reimbursed. There's different scenarios as to why people like to use their credit cards. In most cases, they're doing it either out of necessity because of small business, which then they ultimately still pay off in full, and just creating like a slight delayed spend. Or it's someone that likes to maximize rewards and perks, flyer miles. They want to, cash back rewards, things like that. So what we talked about earlier is that if you're that type of person and you have the financial discipline to make sure you're paying that off in full every single month, well, then here is the tweak that you're going to want to make right away. So what you got to do is dependent on the amount of credit cards that you're using. You need to pull up all the statements right now. So pull them up online, go through your email, go through your mail, however you can access it, pull them up, get them in front of you. And the first thing you want to do is go through your statements, and you want to look for a term that's either called statement closing date or billing cycle end date. That's the most commonly used two terms on the billing statement that you're going to want to look for. And once again, usually that date is happening monthly in a monthly cycle. That's when they generate your statement to then send that billing notice to you with that due date roughly 3 weeks out. So what you're going to want to do is find out what that date is for each card that you're using. And then instead of waiting for that billing statement to generate, you're going to switch how you manage the card. So instead of paying it off on the due date, you're now going to start paying off the balance down roughly 3 to 5 days before the billing cycle end date. That's going to become your new due date in your mind and how you manage these cards. So let's just say it's on the 25th of every single month. What you're going to want to do on the 20th is submit your payment. If it's electronic, just online, submit it and then pay it down. Don't pay it off in full, but pay it down to meet the ratio that you want it to be at. So if you know you want some better credit cards in the future, you're going to want to pay it down to that 9 to 10% area. If you know that you want to apply for a mortgage in the future, you're going to want to pay it down to be between 1 to 3% of the limit, which is very low. That will maximize FICO credit scores for mortgage application in the future. So it's very important for you to know what are you going to need in the future, okay? So then you're roughly 5 days. So once again, 25th is the billing cycle end date. On the 20th every single month, you're now submitting that payment. You're going to pay it down. In this case, let's say FICO 8 score, which is going to be that 9 to 10% area. You pay it down to that balance. So it meets that ratio requirement of what the limit is. So if it's $500 limit, you're going to pay it down to $50 to keep it simple. And now what ends up happening is 5 days later, it generates that statement. It's going to show $50 balance at a $500 limit. In most cases, because you already made the payment, there's not going to be a payment due. And now you have controlled the reporting of that account to your credit bureaus to maximize FICO credit scores while simultaneously maximizing your rewards, perks, flyer miles as to why you're using it. So these are great, simple strategies that you can begin to use right away to maximize FICO credit scores, put yourself in a better position for lending in the future, because the higher the score, the less you pay, the more buying power that you have. And that's what it's all about. You want to put yourself in the best position in the future to achieve your goals. So thank you so much for your time this morning. I'm super pumped. It's Monday. We're going to have a great week, great month. If you have any questions, reach out to me. You can comment or direct message me, or feel free to call or text me at 612 444 3426. 612 444 3426. Have a great day.